Mirroring an object on the other side of an object that's not aligned with either local or world axes can be a real pain. Let's find out how to do it. Okay, so what is going on here? Why do we have ourselves a problem? Well, the problem lies in the fact that this piece was made off axis. So we don't even have local coordinates that have been rotated, because if we have a look at the object itself, this wing object, it has no rotation to it. So I've tested this out. If we had a rotation of maybe, I think it's -11 or so, it would look pretty much flat again. And if we had built it like this, then we could go ahead and, using a mirror modifier, we could just reflect on the z-axis and maybe move it about, have an offset there a little, and it would work. But that's not the case. And sometimes you can't just build things locked to an axis. Sometimes things are off axis. So how do we go ahead and sort this out? Well, let's start from a brand new file. I'm going to delete the default cube. Sorry, Mr. Cube, and add in a plane. I'm going to keep it as a nice simple plane here. And during your construction, you will often go ahead and, let's just say, make this smaller, move it across here. So we've got a slight wing shape there. And this is where you'd have that option to actually build on the z-axis, and then you can add the detail. But let's say that during the process of building your spaceship or whatever it happens to be, you have attached the wings in edit mode and rotated them. Oh dear. Now you've got no local axis because it's still aligned with the world axis and at this random angle. I don't know what that was. I could look back at the video. I don't record all the time, so that's not really an option. And typically when you're sort of like being creative, you might take existing geometry, so we know that it exists and it's snap bang on that surface. That's great. I'm going to press escape there so I don't lock it to its new position. And then you might scale that in. You might inset it and have extra levels of detail. In fact, let's go ahead and do that now. Let's extrude up, scale in ever so slightly, inset, pull down. Then we've got ourselves a bit of detail there. Now this inner face, I don't want to duplicate again, but I also don't want to add in loop cuts around the model where it's just not necessary. I want to add some detail on the inside here. How do I do that? Well, if I press the Y key, it will separate that particular face from the rest of our geometry, which is awesome because we can come in and add in loop cuts. Now, if you add in an even number of loop cuts, it does mean that when you come in and select the alternative ones, or alternate ones, we can come up and separate them so you've got an even separation like so. Okay, so we've got this detail and we want to replicate it on the other side of our object. How do we go ahead and do that? Well, if you've made it as I've just done, you can press the L key whilst over these things and select all of the linked geometry. You may have to separate things out manually. That's absolutely fine. I've had to do that many times in the past. I'm going to press P, and now it's a separate, well, it's a separate object altogether. I like to make things like this as a separate object because it's much easier to handle. So I would have separated that out much earlier on in the process normally. Now, at this point, we can come in, we can scale it, and that obviously moves it off the surface. But if we go to the snapping tool, turn on face snapping, and align rotation to target, and then with face snapping turned on, you can wonder what the hell's happening. But that's fine. If we actually go into edit mode on that object, make sure that all the geometry is selected, we can actually have it snapping to the surface of our object properly, providing we hadn't moved it in the first place. So then we can go ahead, press G, and there we go, snapping to the surface of our object. So we can have this detail up here. But to the point of this video, how do we get it so it's on the other side of our object? Well, we're wanting to mirror it, so let's go ahead, add that mirror modifier. It's going to be in the Z-axis, and we can see it's underneath now, and it's completely skewed. It's at the wrong angle. It's reflecting around the object's origin, but there's not much we can do there in terms of rotating it, because if we rotate the object, the whole thing will rotate round. And of course, the only way of getting it so it's right in this particular case is to align it with the world axis. We don't want to do that. We want a mirror object in which we can work from. Now, again, if this had actually been made and then rotated, we could use that, but we can't. So we've got another option in our tool belt. We can go ahead in object mode, add in an empty. And if we've got face select turned on and align rotation to target, then we can go ahead and when we move it across the face of an object, it will align with that face. So now we've got local coordinates that we can use to offset this particular mirror object. So we can mirror object and use the empty we've just created. I would recommend better naming. And then finally, we can go ahead and grab that empty. If you can look down a view, brilliant. If you can't, you'll have to eyeball it another way. If we knew the thickness of this particular piece, which we could go and look up quite easily, I'm not too fussed in this case, so I just press G to move it. And that is the empty, not the object. Press the Z key once and then again to align it with the local axes, and then we can move it up. And if that's moving too quickly for you, you can hold down the Shift key to make sure it's moving in smaller steps. And there we go, that's aligned perfectly. How cool is that? Now, you will have to do some manual stuff, for instance. I do want to show you this one last thing. If we go ahead and drag this down slightly, and that's entirely possible. You've got a wing that's thicker against the body and not so thick later on. Then when we go ahead and move this empty, unfortunately, even if we map it to this bottom, which is quite easy to do, it won't be aligned with the rest of our geometry here. It'll still be crooked. So at that particular point, what you would have to do is come in and do some manual rotation as well. And once again, holding down Shift whilst you're doing that helps massively. Then we can go ahead, G, Z, Z, and just move that up and into the body. If you've got snapping turned on and it's causing you a problem, remember holding down the Control key will toggle snapping on and off. And there we go, aligning like a pro. Now, a lot of people actually have problems with the bevel modifier, and I've got a really short video that can help you out with that. So if you're having problems, go check out that video next, and I'll see you later.